Dudes podcast. We are going to talk about a few different things. And this week in satire, we are going to discuss the horror of a time-traveling Mayan priest.
Oh, the horror.
Very horror. In our rant of the week, we are going to discuss this Kansas referendum on abortion. Yep, that went terribly. And it's a trap. We're going to discuss NATO and how allowing Finland and Sweden into NATO is probably not the best idea for world peace. And then finally, we're going to finish off with a massive segment on pronouns in our new word order. All of
it's
that.
It's not the size that matters, but how you use it.
Oh my gosh. All of that and more on the Shrewd Dudes podcast. All right, we are back for another Thursday live stream.
Yeah. Threw a little curveball at you. Didn't see that coming, did you?
I guess. Yeah.
That was pretty awesome. Your face, that was the best part right there. I was like, yeah, that's right. But
what a punk. What a punk.
Well, you know what? I gotta keep you on your toes, man. I totally gotta keep you on your toes.
But why? I'm such a reasonable and proper person.
You basically call my segment massive. I'm like, come on, man. I'm trying my best to keep it down, yeah?
Gotta give his best to keep it down still has 20 sources.
Well, yeah.
This is why in that argument when we had with that one pro-choicer, and she asked you to prove something, and I'm like, oh no, you asked Danny for sources. That's gonna be a bad time.
That's right.
I'm like, you're gonna have.
I'm gonna put down. I'm gonna.
And then you did. You provided 30 sources, and I'm like, see, what did I just say?
What have you done?
What have you done?
You've unleashed the Kraken of information. You've unleashed the credible Hulk.
The credible Hulk. That was actually fun. We were playing that game on Monday, and we were playing with Dan Carey, and Dan Carey's like, "What is my biggest pet peeve?" And I'm like, "Not giving sources for arguments." And he's like, "That."
That's the one right there. That's the one.
Yeah. Anyways, for those who are just joining us, this is of course a live stream. We do this once a week. If you are commenting, please try and keep the comments into one space so we can have a lively discussion. Try and limit the comments to either Twitch or YouTube. Either one is easy to access. Facebook, I can't access it, at least not easily. If I try and respond to a comment, it'll play the video, and there's nothing I can do to stop that. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you have any concerns, put them on those two channels. We respond to them as soon as possible. If you're watching a video, we cannot respond. I cannot respond during the video. I cannot see your comments during the video. Otherwise, the video will go black.
So what are the two places that they can comment to?
Twitch
and?
Which is twitch.tv/ShrewdJuicePodcast. And then on YouTube, you can find us at Shrewd Juice Podcast Streams.
Yeah, I'll be watching the YouTube stream. So if you want to post there, feel free.
Sounds great. All right. So
we definitely do get the comments if we get them. So. Oh,
yes. We try and respond as best as possible to all our comments, even if they are trolly trash. We've had a couple.
How often does that happen, Stephen?
Not often, but there was one individual on Twitch that I was like, all right, I have to put the ban hammer down on you because this is just getting inappropriate. But let's jump into our first story.
My favorite segment of the week.
Satire. It's always funny.
Yeah.
All right, so time-traveling Mayan priest horrified by America's abortion numbers. According to reports, a time-traveling ancient Mayan priest appeared through the time portal into the offices of NARAL headquarters last week and found himself horrified by the abortion numbers in America. In Tikal, we only conduct a few hundred child sacrifices per year, said High Priest Ahua Chua. Chaua through a translator. 900,000 babies killed per year seems really excessive. This is barbaric. NARAL employees tried to calm the hysterical Mayan down by telling him that baby killing helped them amassed lots of gold, and that fewer babies on the planet would help them stop the weather from getting worse. Well, that I understand, said Chiaoa. But really, 900,000 babies per year. How do you build pyramids high enough to store all the victims? Neiral then explained that you don't bury the bodies in pyramids anymore, but instead chop them up and sell them to the NIH for medical experimentation. Oh. At press chime, Ahua Chaua had taken up residence in D.C., registered as a Republican, and could often be seen at the Capitol steps yelling, "Enough is enough! Stop the killing, you monsters!"
The funny thing is that even the Aztecs were far more prolific than the Mayans. Having studied the history, the Aztecs basically took what the Mayans started, and they just ran with it. They went nuts. But even the Aztecs didn't do as many child sacrifices as the modern day people do. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
Oh, it's real bad. It's real bad.
It's real bad. But this almost is good as that segment they did with Satan after Roe v. Wade.
Oh,
it was like,
it was so good.
We took a little bit of a loss, but we had a good streak going. We had a really good streak,
Yeah, we had a good run going.
That's right.
We had a great, what was it? The triple Ds, the Demons, Democrats, and it was something else. It was hilarious.
Yeah, but he thanked all the major the Democrats. It's got a shout out to my girl.
My girl Nancy Pelosi.
Nancy Pelosi, you're doing some good stuff out there. Good work out there.
Good work out there. Good work.
Good hustle. So it's again, I think what this does is it tries to put into context the scale, because even we obviously we're both Christians. We study a little bit about the Old Testament,
just a little
child sacrifice system, and even back then, the amount of children actually being killed alive was pretty much nothing compared, at all compared to what we're doing today. And people wonder, is God mad at our country? Yes, he's a bit pissed off. You saw how pissed off he was with what they did in Egypt when they were killing the Israelite children. You saw how pissed off he was when King Herod killed all those babies in Bethlehem and the area. I'm you think he's not pissed off about a couple close to several million children being killed every year? Yeah, I think he's a little bit pissed. Just a
little bit, yeah.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Right, man. Well, we got. I feel ranty. What, are we gonna do some ranting?
Yeah, let's do her.
Let's do some ranting, man.
Posting to get her.
Get her done.
Get her done, exactly. So, let's go on and do the rant of the week.
Go on a journey.
I don't know if it's much of a journey. A journey would require so much more.
It's a visual journey. It's a metaphor. In the words of the infamous Whoopi Goldberg, it's metaphorical. It's a metaphorical journey.
Well, that puts me in a ranty mood all in its own. So let's go.
Red alert.
All right. So from the New York Post, Kansas voters reject anti-abortion measure in first state vote since Roe v. Wade. So voters in the state of Kansas flocked to the polls Tuesday to strike down an anti-abortion ballot measure in a forceful rebuke of the Supreme Court's recent reversal of Roe v. Wade. The non-binding referendum that would have cleared the way for lawmakers to ban or restrict abortion was the first time voters in the U.S. were asked to weigh in on the right to choose, since the High Court overturned 5 decades of federal reproductive protections in June. They voted against Amendment 2 by a margin of 62% to 38%, with 76% of precincts reporting. So the large margin came amid nationwide discontent. Well, ish.
Yeah, that's this is obviously written by a very pro-abortion, contributor. The New York Post tends to lean a little bit more, conservative,
but they're still fairly centrist.
And they still have a lot of contributors that will write like this.
Yeah, they will. So, from the president, the Supreme Court's extreme decision to overturn Roe v. Wade put women's health and lives at risk. Tonight, the American people had something to say about it, he said in a statement. This vote makes clear that we know majority of Americans agree that women should have access to abortion and should have the right to do the thing, to make their own healthcare decisions.
That's right.
Yeah, so voting on the proposition was less bipartisan than usual because it was open to Kansas's more than 500,000 unaffiliated voters on primary day, when the state's registered voters were choosing gubernatorial candidates. If passed, it would have cleared the way for a state legislature to overturn a 2019 state Supreme Court decision that protected the procedure in the Kansas Bill of Rights. Proponents of the measure in Topeka wouldn't say if they would have moved to ban abortion if it had passed, as they sought to gain votes from moderates who supported abortion restrictions, not outright prohibition.
Yep.
So, how are you feeling, Danny? How are you feeling
about this?
Yes.
Well, there's a couple of things that I found interesting. First of all, the media, obviously the leftist media is having a field day with this. They're basically saying that, oh my goodness, this is evidence that Americans as a whole are not on board with abortion. So that's the first claim they make. And secondly, they're all basically trying to say that, this means that this is going to be a big election issue. It's like, no, this is a single issue. And, if you think this means that Kansas voters are going to vote Democrat in the midterms, good luck. Good luck. But it is surprising because obviously Kansas is considered to be one of the more conservative states out there, right along with Oklahoma, Idaho, Utah, all these really hyper conservative states. So it is surprising to see so many voters reject. And this wouldn't have actually made abortion illegal. This would have just given the Kansas City or the Kansas state legislature
the ability to put in restrictions.
Make legislation. Yeah, the ability to actually make stronger restrictions. Now, a couple of facts that you need to know. First of all, even with this not passing, Kansas still bans abortions after 22 weeks. So they are by far not crazy abortion supporters like states like New York or California. So they still have fairly okay abortion restrictions, well in line with a lot of places in Europe. Additionally, I think what this shows is that this is all still very new and fresh to a lot of voters, and a lot of them are they still haven't a lot of people haven't really had to really think about this in any significant way. So I think this shows a bit of hesitation by a lot of people because they as much as the Democrats want to make this a black and white issue. Either you're for abortion or you're against it. There's no middle ground. I think Kansas shows that there's a lot of middle ground. And some people may not be okay with abortions after certain period, but they may be okay with them earlier. Or that some Democratic voters are maybe okay with abortions, but maybe not all the way to 9 months.
Yeah.
So it because of the uncertainty, I think people were kind of about letting abortions go. But additionally, it's much easier to use scare tactics than it is to convince people reasonably. A lot of people are still very ignorant about abortion and about the whole story of it, right? And the media still holds a lot of power. This reminds me a lot. I don't know if you ever heard about Stephen, but there was a big referendum in Ireland, one of the most conservative countries out there.
8.
Yeah, and it was a big surprise that they actually ended up agreeing, that the referendum led to the pro-abortion side winning. Now, a lot of people actually pointed out that the pro-abortion side had massive amounts of advantages. They had all the media was on their side. They had massive campaigns, lots of funding, and they used a lot of kind of skeevy tactics to try to get people, to vote for pro-abortion. Again, using the emotional manipulation of don't you care about women, and using the fear mongering tactics of they want to take away all your abilities and they're going to create this Handmaid's Tale. So any efforts by pro-life advocates in the future you're going to have to really do a lot of education, a lot of advocacy, and it's going to be a long haul. I think people may have been fooled into thinking that this was going to be quick, hey, now that we have the ability, all of our conservative members are going to jump on board with the abortion is bad train. And I think this vote really kind of showed that we have a long way to go. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I think that the the Democrats and the pro-abortionists had a significant advantage, and they've had a significant advantage in both here and in Ireland, in that the funding in the ground game for the pro-abortion movement is far higher than the ground game for pro-lifers when it comes to public involvement. Because they, of course, have massive amounts of funding and they have the entire support of the mainstream media, that changes how they operate. Because the mainstream media can say, oh, like, do you oppose stringent, like, tyrannical restrictions on abortion? And everybody's like, well,
No.
like, centrists will be like, well, no, I don't oppose that. Like, I oppose, like, harsh, like, bans on abortion. It's like, well, then you need to vote against this bill. And it's like, okay. Like, they have a really, it's sad, but they have a really good ground game for trying to persuade people who are in the center, who are undecided, and to brainwash them and say, this is what you should believe. And this is why, of course, when polled, you had a majority of the American public saying, oh yes, like, Roe was wonderful. Like, Roe should have been maintained. Roe should not be overturned. Because a lot of these people just believe what they're told. And the younger population, which is becoming a bigger and bigger voter base, is still quite lefty. So, this is... referendums are not great, because, of course, referendums are not truly a discussion of what is legal. Majority opinion should not dictate law. But this says that we still have a long way to go in convincing public opinion so that we can move from abortion being illegal to abortion being unthinkable. So that's a big gap to make.
Yeah,
and of course, in Canada, we aren't even at the first stage.
No, but we're working our way there.
Yeah, we're working our way there, and the United States is far closer. So we're here for you, American pro-lifers. Keep going.
It's a worthy fight. It's something that's like
it's such a
worth
fight.
fighting for. I think, like, you know, like, at the same time, like, you know, that this is like a negative outcome, like one that you wouldn't hope for. But at the same time, I remember, like, there was a story last week in Tennessee. I think Tennessee passed an actual legislation to actually, like, you know, put more restrictions on abortion. So this is one outcome out of a lot of outcomes that we're seeing across the country. So it's not all bad news. It's like there's a lot of good news. Obviously, this is one of those, like, you know, anomalies in the entire process. But I'm hoping that this leads to a lot of, like, you know, a lot of, like, you know, like, learning and hopefully better strategy for pro-lifers going forward. But yeah, this is part of, like, you know, like, this is like a skirmish and, like, what's going to be a very long battle in the States. And I'm hoping that it turns out better for pro-lifers in the future.
For sure. For sure. So that's a bit of the rant of the week, because we got other topics to talk about and the other stuff fit in better with the other categories. So
amen.
Amen.
We have more stuff to talk about, so I mean, amen. Yeah, we do.
Seems like a bit too serious for this kind of discussion, but okay.
Hallelujah! Let's talk about the other stuff, bro. Let's do this.
Okay, Danny just went from enthusiasm to blasphemy. Do not worry, everyone. You will become contrite and humble.
I will. I'm going to do that. You know, what was that called? Self-flagellation. I'll just go in the back room and just kind of, like, do some self-flagellation.
I will monitor and beat extra as needed.
I have, you know, my leather straps, you know, like, with glass shards, you know, like, built in there. It's like good stuff.
So this is all to lead, so that Danny does not lead himself into temptation, so that he does not fall into traps.
You know, it's very important.
Such as it's a trap right now. We're going to talk about it.
Right. All right, so what we got next, huh?
We're still doing the intro. Shut up.
You have to remember, I can see it.
I know. I'm like, I can't hear it either, and I'm just like, and I didn't tell him they were doing the intro.
That's true.
Okay,
that's true.
We're just gonna go.
I'm flying blind here. I'm flying blind. So those of you at home, if you're watching this, like, when you see the actual, like, you know, the clip of, like, the segment, I can't see that or hear that. So I'm
yes, only the intros. Only the intros. He can see the videos that we show, but he cannot see the intros that we do. So like the intro to the show, the intro to the various segments, he can't see that. So a little bit of grace is permitted, especially considering that we're across the city from each other. So
a little grace for the blind man.
Let's talk about the It's a Trap. So
okay,
to kind of lead into this, NATO has been around for decades. NATO was established after the fall of the Nazis in World War II to establish a trade and peace agreement so that nations would defend each other in times of war. And of course, the Americans had most of the Western world join as far as the world powers. And then, of course, the Russians, they were communist.
The Soviets.
The Soviets. Mm-hmm. And so it's been that way for a long time. The Americans have been the primary backers of NATO, and they've really gotten a raw deal in it, which is why many Americans are pissed at it. Canadians have really gotten benefited by NATO. Yeah, and they've benefited immensely from the American military because, of course, Canada's just like, there's no fear of us being invaded because we have the Americans.
That's right. Super easy. Barely an inconvenience.
Exactly. It is barely
one thing can I add to that?
Yes, of course.
So there was two primary reasons why the USA decided to form NATO. Number one, obviously they had just finished a Second World War, and like both world wars were incredibly devastating to most of the world, and they wanted to create basically some form of automatic defense that would avoid a third war, because at that point, even though the war was over, Nazi Germany had been defeated and all was well, the Americans very well knew that the Soviets were emerging as a world power, and because of the militaristic the militarization of the Soviets during World War II, they basically culminated into a massive threat in the world. And so the Americans had a theory that we're going to basically prevent future conflicts by creating this massive agreement that if you go to war with one of these small countries, then you go to war with us. It's kind of like the idea of Poland, Germany invaded Poland because they thought nobody would do anything. But USA decided, no, we're going to make it obvious. If you attack one of these countries that we have an agreement with, you're going to war with us. So they raised the stakes to make that less of a thing. The second reason why they wanted to create NATO is because most of the countries that had been devastated in Europe did not have the ability to basically defend themselves anymore. They were basically bankrupt. They were completely and totally devastated. They had to rebuild. The only country that had the ability to basically, militarize and be strong was America. So that's part of the reason. It was a good idea, and it actually was successful in what it did. It made it unthinkable for the Soviet Union to actually launch an invasion, which is why they tried to expand to other countries that did not have that treaty, like Vietnam, like North Korea, like Cuba, and South America. They basically tried to turn other countries into communist states. It was basically the Cold War that emerged. NATO was successful in what it did, but now it's a bit of its usefulness has kind of
long past, especially for the Americans.
Usefulness. That's right.
So, anyways, from Reuters, 2/3 majority of U.S. Senate backs Finland and Sweden joining NATO. More than 2/3 of the United States Senate approved on Wednesday Finland and Sweden's accession into NATO, the most significant expansion of the 30-member alliance since the 1990s, as it faces the fallout from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And as voting continued, the tally was 74-1, easily surpassing the 2/3 majority of 67 votes required to support the ratification of the two countries' accession documents. So, this, on face value, it's we're having more countries join NATO. We're having more countries join the peace agreement. It's why would this be a bad thing? Well, there's several reasons for this. As far as national defense, military, and international peace, Finland and Sweden have very little to offer. They are small countries. They do not have extensive militaries. And they're nations with very globalist ideals. And then on top of this, They are nations that are very, very close to, of course, the most aggressive nation in the world right now, which is Russia, because they're currently involved in a war with Ukraine. And Russia and Finland and Sweden joining NATO is not going to, it's not going to add much in terms of benefits, but the negatives of them joining is that it is going to put extra pressure on Russia, and it is going to metaphorically back them into a corner because all of Europe will be against them. And so, and of course, if they do decide to attack Sweden, if they do decide to attack Finland, now the United States and Canada are, by new agreements, obligated to defend them, even though they are offering nothing in terms of benefits to us.
Well, can you do me a quick favor, Steve?
Yes, of course.
Do a quick search just on Google Maps. Can you bring up the world map? I want to show people something that's important, that's significant. You wouldn't think of this if you just hear the names. But if you actually look at the actual maps, you'll actually understand why this is so significant. So go over to where, like, okay, so if you zoom in there, Sweden, obviously, it's kind of like, by itself. So a lot of people can't picture where Sweden, Finland, Norway are, right? Sweden is obviously a heck of a long way from Russia. It is like, it's got a whole Baltic Sea difference. However, Finland is right on Russia's
shares a large border with Russia,
which is significant because one of the things earlier on, we talked about this before, back when the war broke out with Ukraine, is that if you look at the border countries with Russia, like the ones that are actually like, close by. Okay, so you have Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. I don't remember correctly if they were part of NATO or not, but these are smaller states that didn't really have much.
These are all of these, down this line, are all former Soviet states, so they are not they would not be members of NATO.
Right, and that was one of the things that Russia said. Why don't they want Ukraine to join NATO? It's because Ukraine is right on Moscow's doorstep. And so they were okay with Poland joining NATO if that was the case. But, like Belarus is like basically a puppet state of Russia. And I think the other countries were not. However, Finland is quite significant because it's right freaking on Russia's border. And it is a very large border.
Yep.
If NATO was going to launch an attack on Russia, Finland would pretty much be a very strategic place from which to launch an attack. So this is significant, not just because two more countries are joining, but because one of those countries shares a massive border with Russia, and it's very strategically a decent place to launch an attack. And not to mention, Russia's only Baltic Sea ports, if you actually zoom into right next to Estonia, the only St. Petersburg's there, but it's literally right next to Estonia, right in Finland. So the only actual seaport that they have is a very small area there, and it's in St. Petersburg, which is very easily accessible from Finland. So for the Russian Navy, it's right there.
No, I'm just remembering. Okay, for those who are wondering why I'm laughing,
you do that a lot.
I'm seeing Latvia and I'm seeing Riga. And of course, for those who know us, we have watched all of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and there is one of the characters has a son which he adopts from Latvia, and his son's favorite here is Captain Latvia, and his primary attack is the Riga Hammer.
Oh, it's actually named after the actual.
It's named after the capital city of Latvia.
Ah, I didn't realize that. How about that?
Yeah. So,
good old
little
Latvia.
Side note: good old Latvia. Anyways. So one of the reasons that this is really serious is that, of course, we've talked about this on Tuesday about China and Taiwan and Pelosi's visit. So Russia is backing China over provocative Pelosi visit to Taiwan. So, of course, Russia backed China on Tuesday over an unexpected visit to Taiwan by U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi, warning Washington that such a provocative trip could bring the United States on a collision course with Beijing. So we talked about this, of course, on Tuesday. And that just goes more into that.
Essentially, that trip with Pelosi going into Taiwan. Now, there's a couple of things with that are interesting. First of all, it should not be, another country should not be able to dictate to you whether or not they go into a sovereign state or a sovereign area. You should be able to travel freely.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem here is that China is basically trying to gaslight the world and tell the world, like, no, Taiwan is part of China, and any attempt to go there without our permission is basically like you're trying to validate Taiwan's existence and Taiwan's thing. However, Taiwan as a sovereign state has been recognized by the USA since the Cold War started. Like when 1949, when Mao took over China and turned communist, a lot of the government and a lot of the elite in China fled to Taiwan, which is how the actual country was formed, essentially. And then China, since then, has been very we want it back. But since the USA was basically the world power and had pretty much full domination of the oceans and the seas, particularly the Pacific, that China had no ability to do anything about Taiwan. They were basically that was off limits. They could never go against Taiwan. However, China is now rising as a world power, and they're finally getting to the place where they have the ability and the power to possibly make a move against Taiwan. And the USA has been declining as a world power, particularly militarily, and they still have an advantage, both in technology and in naval power in the Pacific. But that may be changing in the next couple of years. So you can understand why China wants to go into Taiwan to take it over. Additionally, Taiwan is not like Ukraine. Ukraine, if Russia could succeeds, takes over Ukraine, it's not going to happen for a number of reasons. But even if they did, really the impact on the world would be fairly minimal. There would be some repercussions, but nowhere near the same as if Taiwan is taken over. The reason is, why, Stephen? Why is Taiwan so important to the world and the economies?
Chips.
And they have salted pork rind chips that are delicious, and the world cannot live without those chips.
Dressed ketchup flavored.
Computer
chips.
Computer chips,
which run things from your phone to your car to your computer
to any kind of technology,
any sort of technology that's more advanced than
including super jets and any kind of missiles and any kind of naval ships and all that. So they kind of hold a stranglehold over the production, which is why some people believe that Pelosi's going there to try to maybe get ahead of this, and the U.S. is trying to head this off at the pass. Some people speculate she's going because they foresee something happening soon, and they're maybe trying to maybe shore up some unfinished business. We'll see. But the fact that Russia and China are united in their condemnation shows that China and Russia are basically kind of in cahoots. They've been essentially allies for a while, and they're united in their opposition of the United States. That's kind of their big thing. Wasn't it the trifecta, Stephen? China, Russia, and Iran were three essentially allies. They're basically the modern day Axis, from what I've heard. Not officially, but they seem to be working in collaboration. I think I heard that somewhere. Not India. India is kind of a little bit more of a question mark. No. But I know that China, Russia, and Iran were kind of three countries.
I thought it was generally considered as China, North Korea, and Iran.
But North Korea is not as big of a threat.
I know North Korea is not,
but Iran is.
Yes, Iran is for sure.
And Iran has a lot of the control and influence in the Middle East, where China and Russia have very big ambitions and a lot of desire. Yeah. So we're starting to see the emergence of two factions in the world. One is obviously USA, Europe, and some of the Pacific, obviously Australia, Japan, and all that. And then you're starting to see China, Russia, Iran, and India's kind of they're kind of dipping their toes in both feet. They're willing to trade with China and Russia, and they're not necessarily joining in with the West. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
Yep.
But so keep an eye on that. There may be some traps going on. Because it looks like while China may talk nice,
times are ahead.
It looks like Taiwan may be their next target. We're going to see.
Yeah, but that being said, it is time to go and move on to the news you may have missed. To talk about the news that you may have missed.
Steven, cue the music.
I did. Shut up.
Dude, like it. I like it.
All right, so starting off, and we'll do 1 2 1 2. Trans cheerleader kicked off team charged after alleged assault on female teammate.
Why are you reading it like Captain Kirk?
I knew you'd figure that out quickly. So, 25-year-old biological male who identifies as a woman was forced to leave Texas cheerleading camp after allegedly choking a female teammate. The trans-identified cheerleader, Avery Chanel Medlock, was kicked off of the camp held at Ranger College last month in Eastland County, Texas. Police responded to the campus on July 21st following reports of a dispute amongst members of the cheer team, according to Fox News. A since-deleted Facebook post alleged that a teammate said Medlock was a man with a penis and that a man should not be on the cheerleading team.
It's ma'am! Ma'am! It's like, well, it must be the testosterone.
Yeah. Well, guys, I'm officially retired as a cheerleader as of last night at 5:30 a.m. A girl on the team was being very disrespectful and told me I am a man with a penis and that guys should not be on the team. She's not wrong. I stood up for myself, and she called her mom and dad because she was scared because I stood up for myself. Her father said she still has testosterone and a penis, and I will kill anyone who comes after my daughter. Good.
And to be fair, a lot of these trans athletes are not the ones that are doing a lot of them are not doing the hormone blockers or all that kind of stuff. I mean, the only ones that are doing so are the ones that have to do it by edict, by all these so Leah Thomas had to do it.
Yeah,
they had no choice because they couldn't compete unless they did that. However, I'm not sure if this athlete was required to actually do testosterone suppression. Because I don't think they would have to, for cheerleading.
No, yeah, I think this is just kind of like it's more of a recreational cheerleading camp than like a competitive league.
Which means that this person has all the aggression and rage of a man. Basically, men are much more willing to fight and to be intimidating physically. Women are more willing. Girls. And women are much more they were talking about this on Tim Cassidy or IRL. Women are much more they desire to use manipulation and to use psychology to kind of go after other women. Men are much more physical. They're willing to resolve their problems with someone else physically, which explains possibly why this person went after them just because they said words they said words. Person got upset and decided to go after them. I'm like, yeah, kind of explains it because that's how a guy would respond.
Yep.
Especially a guy with some mental health issues, which this person likely has. Unfortunately, a lot of people who are transgender suffer from a lot of what do you call them? Comorbidities, a lot of different parallel or a lot of mental issues at the same time, which really causes a lot of their angry outbursts. Sadly.
Yep.
So very understandable.
All right, so
let's go to the next story.
BBC
BBC News.
Taylor.
So if you guys don't know who Breonna Taylor is, she was the victim. But she was the one who died in a police shootout with a violent felon who happened to be in the apartment when this violent shooting happened. So, the 4 U.S. police officers have been arrested and charged over the fatal shooting of Breonna Taylor. Ms. Taylor was killed in her home, Louisville, Kentucky, on March 13, 2020, by plainclothes police who were executing a no-knock search warrant. By the way, even though they were doing that warrant, that no-knock warrant, they didn't actually do that. They actually did knock and tried to get the people inside that basically started shooting. The hospital worker, 26, was shot as officer in the apartment just after midnight while she was with her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker. Again, she was with her boyfriend because she was actually, participating and working with him in drug deals. Her death sparked racial injustice protests across the country, of course, because BLM must go nuts. Only one officer involved in the raid, Brett Hankinson, has been previously charged over the case, but Mr. Hankinson, who fired 10 shots at the incident, was acquitted by a jury earlier this year of endangering Miss Taylor's neighbors when some of the bullets he fired entered their home. It's about 4 people to face new charges through the U.S. Department of the DOJ. So this goes on, but again, what this story shows is, for those of you who aren't unaware, there was a big court case over Breonna Taylor, and the cop who was essentially, accused of excessive force was exonerated by the court, because when you actually look at all the details, you realize, no, these cops were shooting in self-defense. She, unfortunately, was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The cops were shooting blindly into an apartment that was shooting blindly out of them. So it's very difficult to make the case that this was on purpose and all that. But it sounds, again, like the DOJ, which has been politicized, and which is headed by perhaps one of the worst, attorney generals, Merrick Garland, who is an absolute political hack who only prosecutes one way. It seems like for political reasons, they are going after people more and more. Yep. This is par for the course. So keep an eye on this, because it sounds like they're basically once again.
And of course, something to be added was that there was already an internal investigation done by the Louisville Police Department and by the Kentucky Attorney General, and both found very little evidence of wrongdoing. And then it was the federal investigators. They're like, oh, yes, there's plenty of wrongdoing. And it's like, but they already did these investigations and found there not to be any wrongdoing. Where are you getting this? It's like, well, it's the FBI. Okay, it's the FBI. The FBI has many, many times over been used as a weapon by the establishment elite to attack those who are dissidents and who are those who oppose the establishment. It's really, really scary how easily the FBI can be used as a tool as an enforcement arm of the establishment left. So, moving on to something a little more light. Batgirl. The Batgirl movie cancellation. Why it happened in the social media fallout. The bat signal has gone out over Gotham, but what happened? Oh no, Batgirl. What happened to Batgirl? That's the question on everyone's lips today after Warner Brothers Discovery unceremoniously canceled the upcoming movie starring Leslie Grace in her first outing as the titular heroine. Batgirl was about to pave the way for the resurgence of the DC Extended Universe. I don't think that would have done it. Michael Keaton was back in Batman, which would have been interesting. J.K. Simmons was reprising the role of Commissioner Gordon. Brendan Fraser was to make a triumphant return to the big screen as the film's pyromaniacal villain. Interesting. Now, of course, can you tell me just a bit of... Okay, super nerd trivia for Danny.
Okay, let's go.
Batman's list of rogues. Which of Batman's list of rogues is a pyromaniac?
It's a pyromaniac?
Yes.
Oh, yes, so many villains, though. I know Electro uses electricity.
That's Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. Oh, so in Batman lore.
In Batman lore.
Pyromaniac.
There has not been a film about this character.
No, I don't think I know, because I know Batman has a lot of villains, but I don't know any of the primary ones that would do. I know the Penguin uses fire out of his umbrella kind of weapons, but I think you're thinking more specific.
Yes. So
what are you thinking?
Firefly.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, let's see. Brendan Fraser. Batgirl. Batgrill. Yep, Firefly.
Yeah, they have to come up with a new villain to kind of
Well, it's not a new villain.
Keep bringing it up.
Firefly has been around for a long time.
No. New villain in terms of the movie and the universe. Well, yeah, he's not a primary. He's not a primary bad guy.
No, he's not. Firefly is usually a secondary baddie.
Yeah.
So, but then again, Batgirl is also a secondary heroine.
No, yeah. I mean,
so the further you go down the line, the less you're going to have. So, but this is a 90 million production that they pulled the plug on.
Decided to scrap it.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's definitely kind of woke that they used a black actress to play Batgirl.
You have to, yeah, of course.
When, of course, those who know the Batman comics know that Barbara Gordon is like a super pale redhead.
Yep.
So
now here's the big takeaway from this. This is the first time that a studio, after getting horrible reviews before they even released the movie, decided that it was better to just take their loss than to try to release this because of they felt that this was going to damage their brand and this movie was going to be a humongous mistake. This may actually be one of those times when studios actually learned their lesson and stopped making this garbage.
Well,
because
I think what they probably should have done is they probably should have done more polls and then changed it from fans' reaction. Like, I think back to a couple years ago. What was a big film that released a trailer and then due to fan reaction they changed the movie?
That was Sonic.
Because fans hated the appearance of Sonic.
Also, the what was the Han Solo movie?
Yes.
There was a massive amount of rewrites and reshoots for that one. The problem with this one is I think this thing was so infused with wokeism that they couldn't basically fix it.
No.
The crowd was so I don't think they saw any qualities of this movie. And they basically realized like they had to cut their losses. They're going to lose too much. So I think it's good. I'm glad to see this kind of stuff happening. I'm hoping that these studios feel the pinch enough financially that they will finally start saying no to this garbage. And I'm hoping that actually leads to hopefully better movies in the future because people are really sick of this stuff. So let's go to the next story. So this is from the Daily Mail. And the story is, Trump is a coward. A real man wouldn't lie to his supporters. Dick Cheney eviscerates Donald in campaign ad for daughter Liz and calls him the biggest threat to the Republic in our nation's history. Stephen, can you go down to the video? Let's just watch the video and then I'll kind of like comment on what's actually going on.
In our nation's 246-year history, there has never been an individual who was a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power after the voters had rejected him. He's a coward. A real man wouldn't lie to his supporters. He lost his election and he lost big. I know it, he knows it, and deep down, I think most Republicans know it. Lynn and I are so proud of Liz for standing up for the truth, doing what's right, honoring her oath to the Constitution, when so many in our party are too scared to do so. Liz is fearless. She never backs down from the fight. There's nothing more important she will ever do than lead the effort to make sure Donald Trump is never again near the Oval Office. And she will succeed. I'm Dick Cheney. I proudly voted for my daughter. I hope you will too.
I'm Liz Cheney, and I approve this message.
How about no?
No.
So this is like, you look at the guy. He's like staring down the camera. He's like, there's never been a bigger threat to America than Donald Trump. Like he's literally has like this scowl on his face. The guy does not know how to smile. He has no idea how to be like non-threatening and approachable. So what happens here, like just a quick summary of this story, Liz Cheney has basically turned herself into public enemy number one among Republican voters, particularly among the voters in the places where she was elected, which I think is Wyoming.
That's
Wyoming.
Wyoming.
If I remember correctly.
She is
Wyoming voters hate her with a vengeance. And so what is she doing? She is desperate. She is desperate because she knows she has pissed off not only her own base, but Republicans in general. Like Republicans all across the board, from Ted Cruz to Eric Swalwell to I was going to say Tony Fauci. Who's his counterpart? Ron Paul? Is it Ron Paul?
Rand Paul.
Rand Paul, thank you. People don't like her because she basically was used by the Democrats as the token Republican in the January 6th committee and all that. She's basically a full-out sellout. And this is a desperation move, and it's not a good one because Dick Cheney is the one who lied to the American public about the weapons of mass destruction. If there's anybody who actually could be guilty of lying, it's him, because he blatantly lied about what actually was out there in Iraq in order to start the Iraq War. Whereas Trump, you can accuse him of lying, but he legitimately, whether he's right or not, right or wrong, that's a matter for the evidence to show. But he legitimately believed that the election was had enough fraud that it probably wasn't legitimate, which is why he was doing what he did. And he has the right to do that through the courts and through a lot of advocacy and policy. This is basically like a Republican candidate who is completely like in a tailspin and is trying desperately to grab onto her father's reputation to save herself. So
Yep.
real coward is Dick Cheney.
Yes.
He's kind of living up to his name of the Dick.
But someone who is not a coward, Ron DeSantis. DeSantis suspends Soros-backed state attorney after refusal to enforce Florida's laws. On Thursday, Governor Ron DeSantis announced that effective immediately, his administration would be suspending state attorney Andrew Warren. Warren in 2020 told the Tampa Bay Times that Soros was a donor to his campaign. So, when you flagrantly violate your oath to office, when you make yourself above the law, you have violated your duty, you have neglected your duty, and you're displaying a lack of competence to be able to perform those duties, DeSantis said in a press conference on Thursday. And so today we are suspending state attorney Andrew Warren effective immediately. We're not going to allow this pathogen that's been around the country of ignoring the law. We're not going to let that get a foothold here in the state of Florida. We're going to make sure our laws are enforced and that no individual prosecutor puts himself above the law. And I can tell you the states and localities that have allowed this to happen, they are ruining the day. You want to know why some people are moving to Florida? Because their communities are no longer safe, thanks to prosecutors that think they know better than the people's representatives, and that they get to pick and choose which laws that they're enforcing. Yep. If you're picking and choosing what laws that you're enforcing, you are no longer worthy to be a state attorney. It's as simple as that.
And this is bucking a trend that's actually been going on in the United States, where all these Soros-backed attorney generals are basically trying to create chaos by refusing to basically enforce the laws.
Yep.
In order to kind of create chaos, to empower criminals and to basically disempower victims of crime, which is a terrible, terrible thing.
Indeed.
Okay. The final story that we're going to cover today, in news you may have missed, is from CTV News. Demi Lovato opens up about why she's using she, her pronouns again. So this girl's flip-flopping like somebody in menopause. My goodness. Hot flashes, cold flashes, it's all over. So Demi Lovato, the singer and former Disney Channel actor, has started to use the she pronouns again. By the way, if anybody wonders what show she was on a show called Sunny with a Chance. You can look it up on YouTube. She was also part of a couple of little mini movies, and she also was on. She had her own music. She was a music star.
Yeah, she still sings.
I do not recommend you watch the music videos for those. They are so flashed. It's a little bit unnerving. So I recommend don't watch those. So Lovato, who in 2021 came out as non-binary and changed their pronouns to they, said this week on the Spout podcast that they've been feeling more feminine recently and adopted their former pronouns. I'm such a fluid person when it comes to my gender, my sexuality, my music, my creativity. Notice how they just completely conflates all these things together. Creativity and music. It's it totally fluctuates. Like my sexuality and gender. This is all part of a new framework. Lovato said on the podcast, a short-form interview series with celebrities. Lovato now uses both. They're trying to get have their cake and eat it too. Both they and she pronouns, and according to her Instagram account, she has also said she identifies as both queer and pansexual. It's basically like a word, help yourself to whatever works.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon for this is part of the justification. It's not uncommon for non-binary people to use gendered pronouns or interchange pronouns. Singer Janelle Monáe came out as non-binary, said they would continue to use she pronouns in addition to they. This is part of this. What's going on here? If you're wondering, my own editorial bent is they're basically trying to appeal to the LGBT mob, which is by far the most powerful lobby group in America.
Yeah.
And in order not to piss them off, they basically have to throw them a bone, be like, "Oh, I'm still non-binary, but I also like my female pronouns, so I'm going to have a little bit of everything." That way, they can maintain their popular appeal and not lose their fans and not get canceled. Because if you're in Hollywood, you want to be in Hollywood. You can't avoid the entire trend. So this was significant because what it shows is that even people who say that they're on the spectrum, gender spectrum, are still completely and totally fluid and all the time. But yet we're saying that when a kid who's 5 years old, who are by far the most fickle and changing creatures on Earth, that when they say that they're the opposite sex, well, you have to take that like gospel truth, and they're you lock them in for life. So it really is a big blow to the whole gender ideology, because it shows that even people who are adults still can't figure out where they line up on the supposed gender spectrum.
Well, and of course, like looking at someone like Lovato, she's an adult, and a lot of people look up to her, unfortunately. And when she was saying, "Oh yeah, I can just like change my pronouns and change my gender at will," this is very harmful for a lot of young fans of a former Disney Channel star. This is, it may not seem like a big deal to her, but this will affect quite a few people's lives, and always for the negative. It's a sad analysis, but it's true. And it's one of the reasons that today we're in our New Word Order segment, we're talking about pronouns. So I'm going to cue that up.
All right. Launch it in.
I'm going to transition briefly into commentary. And then I'll turn off the news. The song.
The song. It's very important.
And then I shall switch over.
All right, let's do it.
There we go. All right. All good to go.
I like how that was nice and quick.
Yep.
All right. So, new word order. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with this segment, what it is basically going into how the left likes to redefine terms as a way of like avoiding like the tough conversations and of basically trying to enforce their own will. And it's basically, if you can't win using reason, change the rules. And that's basically what they do. And this whole the whole idea of pronouns is kind of like the next battleground right now, because like, you know, for the gay lobby, like the Gestapo, like a lot of people like to call them, their whole idea was love is love, right? It's like, you know, any kind of love is legitimate as long as it doesn't matter who you love, as long as you're happy. That's all that matters. That was their redefinition of love and a redefinition of marriage. For the trans lobby, the redefinition is the idea that there are no divisions between gender. They started off with gender and sex are different. Now they're kind of blending them together to the end goal is to completely eliminate the lines between male and female, to basically suggest that they don't exist. All of this comes from a very prominent psychologist who is also a monster in the, what was it, like the 70s, 80s, Stephen? Like the Dr. Money and some other very, like, you know, immoral men who basically like popularized this idea that the gender is completely and totally detached from biology. You know, look up the Dr. Money and the twins that he basically mutilated and abused for years to try to, like, you know, create this concept. So the reason we wanted to get into this week is because of a very curious thing that happened in the media. This actually, I think it came out today or yesterday, which is basically a teacher that went on TikTok and she had a bit of a conundrum. And if you can go down, Stephen, go to the video and let's look at the conundrum that she found herself, and let's talk about what happened here and how she found herself in this predicament.
Yeah.
So let's launch into that video and we'll kind of talk about it. So see if you can spot where she went wrong.
Okay, TikTok, I really need your help here on this one. I'm a teacher. I teach 5th and 6th grade, and this morning, I don't know, somehow the concept of pronouns came up. And
I don't know how.
One of my students said, "Well, Miss Odell, did you even ask me my pronouns?" And I was like, whoa. I hadn't actually asked him his pronouns, and I had called him a him, and I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I haven't actually asked you what your pronouns are, and what are they?" And he said, Banana said, "Banana and rock." And I was like, dude, no, like, I was actually really upset because I thought he was making fun of it. And in fact, I'm still pretty sure he was making fun of it. And they all agreed, no, like, you can choose anything. Banana, rock, if you want banana and rock to be a pronoun, banana and rock's your pronoun. Is it? TikTok, tell me.
She's that stupid.
She's literally like run into a gigantic dose of reality, which is okay. So, Stephen, can you kind of guess what happened? Why was she stumped by this whole little stunt that these students did? Because remember, these are fifth graders. They figured out a giant hole in the whole ideology.
Well, I don't know if they figured it out, but they just thought the whole thing was stupid and hilarious. And
but
if you can describe and tell other people how you would like to be described, then you're going to tell them whatever you want. Like, I remember when Bill C-16 was becoming a big thing, I was like, yes, if you're going to make preferred pronouns and mandating that you have to use someone's preferred pronouns, like mandated and legislated by law, then of course my legal preferred pronoun is His Royal Majesty, and if you don't use it, then that's a hate crime.
Yeah.
Now, yes, I'm trolling you, but it's because you guys are saying this is the law, and you're saying that you can identify your pronouns as anything. Hence, this kid is saying, my pronouns are banana and rock.
Yes. Now, the reason why this worked is because these kids figured out what, I don't know if they figured it themselves or maybe their parents, who knows, but this was a very smart play. What they did is they realized pronouns are completely made up, right? Demi Lovato chose they, them pronouns, she, her, but she was going with the popularly recognized pronouns. So if you actually look at, there's a lot of universities out there that have a very large list of possible pronouns that people can use. Sie, her, sie, zer with X, or all sorts of crazy words that people use. But ultimately the problem is because only the person who makes the distinction can choose the word, and there are no limitations. It's up to them. And because you are not allowed to tell a person that their truth is wrong, then everyone must respect the pronouns that the person chooses. This is the trap that they walked into in this classroom. The rule is you're not allowed to tell a person they're wrong, and a person can choose whatever pronouns that they want. So the teacher basically ran into a giant a giant trap that they don't know how to get out of. It's exactly the same problem that Matt Walsh exposed with asking, what is a woman? Right? Because what is a woman is basically a question they can't answer without basically like putting a gigantic nuclear bomb in the middle of their entire ideology. They need it to be completely subjective. Otherwise, it falls apart. But you can't make a definition without making something objective. And this is the problem that they found themselves in. Now, there's a video that I wanted to kind of showcase that really shows this. Obviously, Matt Walsh has already addressed this, but in a very brilliant way. The video is from the Dr. Phil interview. A lot of people have probably seen it, but he really brilliantly explains something that he makes a comparison and brilliantly shows why the concept of pronouns is so ridiculous. And Stephen, can you cue up the video from Twitter? So this is from the Dr. Phil interview. One of the segments, Matt Walsh had probably one of the best responses to the concept of pronouns and why you can't have your own pronouns. So put it in full screen. Let's go.
Of gender, just sex. You're either male or female.
Right.
And someone feeling in a mental, emotional way that they don't identify with the sex that they have been biologically created as and assigned at birth based on their genitalia. If they don't feel that way, that there's no construct that describes that, experiences that.
Well, that's got nothing to do with the reality. So you can feel however you want. I mean, I could sit here and say that I feel like a tomato plant, but that doesn't mean that I'm actually in those things. So your self-perception, you can have whatever self-perception you want, but you can't expect me to take part in that self-perception or to take part in this kind of charade, this theatrical production. You don't get your own pronouns, just like you don't get your own prepositions or your own adjectives. You know, it's like if I were to tell you, my adjectives are handsome and brilliant, and whenever you're talking about me, you have to describe me as handsome and brilliant because that's how I identify. It makes no sense. You don't get your own pronouns. That's grammar. That's language.
So you think it's a delusion? Someone
you
is
stop there,
self-delusional.
Yeah. So he kind of goes on, but basically the point that he makes, and it's a brilliant comparison, is that okay? So you like the idea that that these people are saying is that these are my pronouns, and calling me by my pronouns is like a sign of respect, or like of being kind, or all that kind of stuff. But here's the problem. Okay, so Stephen, I'm gonna give you a bit of a kind of conundrum, and I want you to kind of answer it as well as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it okay to, if somebody, let's say for example that I don't know, our friend Shelly. Let's say our friend Shelly changed her name legally from Shelly to Shannon. Okay, would you call her Shannon from that point on if she changed her name to Shannon?
Yes.
Okay. Why would you do that? Why would you call her Shannon even though we know her as Shelly? Why would that be okay?
Well, because changing your name is actually how you wish people to refer to you. It is a subjective thing, because it's what people call you. It's not anything that describes your personality. It's simply what you wish to have as your title.
Right. So then let's say for then that Shelly decides that she wants to switch over to a different gender. Impossible, but just for argument's sake. Now, would you refer to her as a he?
No.
Right. Why would you not refer to her as a he?
Well, because referring to herself as a he is describing something that does not exist. It would be describing something that is a false reality.
Right. And this is the crux of what's going on. Because a lot of transgender activists will basically try to make a conflation. They'll say like, well, if you're willing to call someone by a different name, why can't you like use their pronouns? And the reason is because a name is is completely subjective. For example, I like people call me Danny. My actual official birth name is Daniel, right? But I go by Danny. That's not but the like referring to me as a he is a truth claim. You're actually making a statement about reality. So if somebody is transgender and they're saying you have to call me a she, even though I'm a man, they're demanding that you make an objective statement about reality. You're making a truth claim. And so they're actually requiring you to lie. It's like that Star Trek episode where Captain Picard, you know the one, right? Where Captain Picard was held hostage, and they asked him, like, how many lights are there? It's like, there's 4. Nope, there's 5. And the whole episode was basically trying to torture him, to try to force him to lie and to say that there's 5 lights, not 4. This is what they're doing. They're holding up a banana and demanding that you call it a fruit. They're basically requiring you to lie on purpose. And this is why it's wrong to demand someone say something they don't believe is objectively true. If someone is like, I'm a Christian, but I would never go to an atheist and say, you have to say that God is real. And like, well, I don't want to say that because I don't think it's true. Like, no, you have to say it or you're going to get punished or canceled, or it's the same idea. Pronouns are a truth claim. Now, that being said, the whole truth claim about like pronouns, sounds like more, let's talk about the pros and cons. The problem too with pronouns is not just that, that's the basis for why we refuse to use them, because we refuse to say a lie. They believe it's true. We don't believe it's true, but they're demanding that we have to speak the truth that they want us to speak. We have to deny what we see with our eyes and what we know commonsensically. But here is some of the reasons why it's not just like them asking us or requiring us to do something that's like untrue. It's more dangerous than they're like making it out to be. And let's go through some of these. So one problem with the pronoun idea is that pronouns are being used as a weapon. And let's go through a couple of examples, okay? So this is from Blaze Media. Like, we're not going to actually go into the stories, but refer to them. There was a fire chief in Atlanta. He was fired because he participated in writing a book, and the book uses Bible verses that state like Christian values, which is like marriage between a man and woman, and then men, like that men and women cannot just change their gender. He was fired by the police department for doing this. He was basically saying something that was basically offensive to people who are gay or people who are in the LGBT community. And so you're not allowed to say these things because my feelings are hurt, so you are punished for saying something wrong. Okay, so that was this happened like not that long ago. Fire chief job. Another story that happened was you can go to the next picture there, Stephen. This was so this was a rugby player. I remember looking into the story. This rugby player in Australia, and his name was
Israel Folau.
Israel Folau. So what Israel Folau did, he shared a Bible verse, and his Bible verse was basically saying the most basic things about the idea of God wants people to basically marry the opposite sex, date the opposite sex. He was completely destroyed. His life was ruined, and he was basically kicked off high level, off of his team just for quoting a Bible verse. He didn't even say it. He just quoted a Bible verse, and he was destroyed because of this. And he wasn't the only one. There was also a lady in, I think it was Finland. So if you can go to the next story.
Yep.
So there was a very, very prominent politician in Finland. And again, she shared a Bible verse on Facebook. This wasn't even like in the government or in parliament or anything like that. This was on her own Facebook. But people tried to destroy her. They even actually had a criminal actual court case where she had to fight legally to avoid being punished for having used or said the wrong things. Okay, so again, you're not allowed to speak against the LGBT truth. These are blasphemy laws, and they're used as a weapon. Can you go to the next story?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the 3 examples so far. There was a man convicted and sentenced for misgendering and insulting a male who identifies as female. And this was from December 29th, just like this past Christmas. Again, a man was if you misgender, in other words, if you don't use the right pronouns, you're committing a crime now. It's not just you were being impolite or not politically correct. You're now committing a crime. And this is wrong because what is happening is the transgender lobby is basically saying it's not enough for you. You can't have your own opinion. You have to speak what we demanded you speak. Otherwise, we will destroy you. And there will be totally subjective consequences for those who believe the wrong thing. This is Wrong Think from 1984. And there's one final story that also this was from Canada, Canadian story.
Yep.
This is from New York Post. There's a father arrested for discussing child's gender transition in defiance of court order. This was the story about the Canadian man whose child. Yeah, his child was basically hijacked by ideologues in the school system, logical.
Yep.
And they basically convinced his daughter that she is a boy. And in one of the most incredible moves of authoritarianism I've ever seen, the court demanded you cannot even though you believe differently, you have to say the words and use the language that we demand you use, or we will punish you. He had to call his daughter in court a boy. He had to do that, or else he was going to be punished. So this isn't just a disagreement in people think we're having a disagreement. Pronouns. I'm no, this is dangerous now because the people in charge, the people who are using this, are weaponizing it. And it's as a Christian, or even not as a Christian, you have to remember what they're demanding that you do is they demand that you lie. You have to lie, or you are a bad person, and you deserve whatever we do to you. This is not a free society. This is a dangerous, fascist, authoritarian, totalitarian society. This is what Jordan Peterson was fighting against. He was fighting against the idea that compels speech. You have to use the words that we demand, otherwise you're a bad person, and then everything we do to you is totally acceptable and totally okay. So that's the premise that I'm kind of saying. These are not just a difference of opinion. This is actually dangerous because they're weaponizing it, using it. Stephen, do you have any thoughts on that idea? The idea of like the weaponization of pronouns.
Oh, well, it's a very common it's very well known in conservative societies that they would use pronouns and weaponize them. This has been mainstream conservative ideology since 2015, of course, when Jordan Peterson had his famous moments when he became an international star because he said, no matter what you do, no matter if this bill passes or not, I'm still not going to abide by it because you cannot compel me to say things, and you especially cannot compel me to say things that aren't true.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is just moving further and further along that road. And like, as I've said before, we knew this would happen.
Mm-hmm.
We knew it was going in this direction. The slippery slope was inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
And so now it's just a matter of defying and saying no, regardless of the consequences, because truth matters more than legal precedents.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, there was, I don't know where I heard it, but somebody said they said that the way that the LGBT lobby works is at first, when they don't have power, they cry for tolerance. Yeah. Please, like, we have to be tolerant. We have to be tolerant. But once they get power, then they completely forsake that value, tolerance. And now it's like, do what we say or else. And this is how it works. Once they've gained this political power in society, where they are now the chosen, like a victim group, then now they're completely intolerant of any dissent, and they're willing to use to abuse power in order to force you to comply. And there are like countless stories we can go into. But let's go into another element of this entire problem that's going. Not only are pronouns being used as a weapon, so that's what we just covered, these stories, and there's many more stories that cover the idea that pronouns are being weaponized.
Mm-hmm.
But another angle that I want to point out is that pronouns are promoting harm.
Yep.
Because by normalizing them and without telling people and warning people about the implications of children using pronouns, we're actively promoting harm. And here's how. So let's go first to the Newsmax story.
Yep. So teacher claims entire classroom of second graders switched pronouns.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so in a video posted to Libs of TikTok, a woman claiming to be a teacher said that her entire classroom of second graders switched pronouns after one student came forward. Let's just watch that video.
Sure, go for it. Yep.
Please not be deleted. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
It's for me to make this TikTok without crying, because that's what I do. Please ignore the dog bone crunching behind me. Anyhow, one of my students felt safe enough to share his pronouns with me. And
I wonder why.
So, once the class knew that I knew, they all switched pronouns.
Yep.
They're second graders. Like, I'm torn between being really, really happy to be a safe space and just absolutely furious that an entire group of second graders has to keep this secret from not safe people. Why are kids feeling unsafe? And furthermore, why does everyone talk about how are the kids going to understand? The kids fucking understand it.
They don't.
It's easy for them. It's the adults who have all of the frigging issues and hang-ups and bullshit. Kids are fine. Okay.
No.
Kids are easy to manipulate.
Easy to manipulate, which is why you do it.
I can easily convince a child that there is a creepy monster hiding in their closet. Mm-hmm. And if they ever step foot on the floor when it's dark, that they'll eat them alive or something like that. I can easily do that. That's not hard to do with a second grader. That's a pretty easy task. Kids are impressionable. The reason why the adults are in their lives, parents are in their lives, is to protect them from this kind of abuse. Now, this is why the term groomer is constantly used for these people, because grooming is a neutral term. It basically describes somebody who is trying to use whatever means can to try to prepare somebody for something that they want to. They're preparing them for something else.
Mm-hmm.
So you can, if I want to groom somebody into being a youth pastor, I would basically show them how to do it, and I would teach them all the ways to do it properly. If you want to groom somebody to be a sexual deviant, or possibly to join the LGBT and be aside and be an ally, this is what you do. And you try to keep it secret from parents. Now, you could think like, now let's face it, this teacher, so-called teacher, this person, they want this to happen. First of all, it's very clear. Like you can see by the way that they look, they're completely on board with this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It is completely and totally nonsense that an entire class, let's assume that there's 20, 25 children in this class. Overall, the numbers of actual transgenderism are insanely low. They're below 1%. But the idea that a whole classroom could suddenly realize they're transgender is so nonsensical. The fact that this person doesn't see it, it shows how completely bought into the ideology they are. But this is due to something very, very nefarious that's going on. Go to the next picture, Stephen. Yep. So there's something nefarious happening, which is called, I forgot what it's called. The social contagion phenomenon that is happening. So this is a book by a lady named Abigail Schreier. The book is called Irreversible Damage, the Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters. Now, she didn't come up with the research for this. She just compiled it. She just compiled all the research that's out there, brought it together into one book. She's not a scientist. She's a journalist, and she brought it together. Essentially, what she argues and what she demonstrates in her book is that there's a thing called social contagion. There's a phenomenon that happens where if one girl among a social group of girls comes out and says, "Oh, I'm transgender now," or "I'm gay, I'm a lesbian, I'm bi now," that more often than not, her friends will also come out as trans or as gay or lesbian or something like that. Why? Because there's a social aspect to this, and because it's very easy to get caught up into it. And a lot of girls fall into this. This is why in transgender circles, the girls are almost exclusively, in large numbers, the ones that are coming out as transgender, even though historically boys were transgenderism seemed to affect men and boys more often than girls. But it's flipping now. And a giant number of women or girls are coming out as transgender. Why? Because it's social contagion. We've already seen this recently with, there was an article that came out last week that basically said all these girls, there's a huge in girls that are coming out as Tourette's and showing symptoms of Tourette's. Why? Because they saw somebody online on some TikTok or on some Instagram talking about their Tourette's, and suddenly they developed the symptoms. Did they have Tourette's suddenly? No. They developed it because of the social contagion. And the problem is that once a child gets convinced that they're transgender, then all sorts of bad actors, ideologues, will basically try to convince them, "Oh, you're transgender now. Good. We have to keep it a secret so that we can secretly put you on the path towards gender transition. We're going to put you on hormone blockers. We're going to put you on cross-sex hormones. We're going to do that." And once you do that, the consequences are life-altering, and the kid will never be the same, and they won't even know what hit them. Yeah. This is the problem. Now, Irreversible Damage tries to show that why this is a problem, but the response to this book has basically been universal across anybody who is in support of the transgender ideology. And Salon had a good article that showed what their response is. What is their approach? Salon basically says Amazon, so this is an article from Salon. Amazon sales of a transphobic book revives greater free speech debate. What responsibility do publishers and booksellers have for the content of the books they promote? So this is universally the response from the left, and particularly anyone on the left that is 100% in support of LGBT. Ban the book. Censorship. Book burning. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to address the issues. Ban it. Cancel it. Completely destroy it. This is how they work. They can only maintain their lies through secrecy, and they have to keep these people from finding out the truth, and they feed them with all a barrage of lies. They don't want them to do research. This is how a cult operates. Next picture, if you want to go. Yep. So this is how they operate. This is why it's so dangerous. Unfortunately, and this is just one example of dozens and dozens. We talked about this before. Even recently, the FDA warns that brain swelling, which is tumors, and permanent vision loss found in children taking puberty blockers. These things have long-term damage and harms that will happen to children. And the children have no idea. They don't know how to weigh these kind of things. This is why historically parents got the decision. If Stephen's child has, I don't know, some kind of disease, Stephen gets to decide how the treatment works. Because unfortunately, his daughter Tori and his son Curtis can't make those decisions. They don't have the mental capacity to make those decisions. But people in government schools and government agencies are basically abusing children by saying, "Oh, you get to decide, and we're going to basically like bend everything to make it possible." These are basically children who are being abused because they're not being told the truth. They're being lied to, and they're not. Unfortunately, children are not capable of saying no to adults, particularly authorities. They don't know any better. And they're being manipulated to think that their parents are liars and that their parents hate them and that they don't want what's best for them. This is cult behavior, but it's now universal. Next slide or next picture. Okay, so we're going to finish off on this story. This is from the Daily Signal. Thank you. Not safe. England to shut down only gender clinic for minors while Biden pushes child sex changes. So, Stephen, go ahead and read the story.
Sure.
Go for it.
So, England's National Health Service plans to shut down its only youth gender clinic after investigation found it to be unsafe for children, according to the Telegraph. An independent review found that medical professionals at Tavistock Transgender Clinic were pressured into unquestionably affirm children's gender identities and skip the normal clinical assessment process, prompting the NHS to shut down the clinic by spring 2023. It will replace Tavistock with regional clinics offering a holistic approach more focused on children's mental health, the Telegraph reported. So this move comes after a year-long investigation into claims that doctors were fast-tracking children into biomedical interventions to affirm their transgender identities without considering mental health issues or other factors, according to the Telegraph. Meanwhile, the Biden administration continues to promote childhood sex changes as a medically necessary and potentially life-saving treatment.
Yeah, you can finish on this next paragraph here.
The review began in 2020 over concerns that there was a scarce and inconclusive evidence to support clinical decision-making. According to the Telegraph, Tavistock was reportedly offering puberty blockers to children as young as 10.
So here is what happened in Tavistock. Tavistock was focused and featured in a major lawsuit that happened. There was a former transgender girl who was basically fast-tracked into these systems, and she sued the British government. Said, like, hey, you guys lied to me, like profoundly lied to me. And they basically did an investigation, and the people who were doing the investigation were shocked, not only at how they were actually doing their process, but the fact that they were intentionally not recording all sorts of things that they should have been recording, like all sorts of stats and things that they should have been asking the student. And basically, the idea was, I think that they finally came to like some interesting conclusions, that virtually no one who asked who was referred to this clinic was denied. Virtually no one. If you want to go into a clinic for anorexia, there's going to be a large number of people who are going to be rejected. Be like, no, treat this without like serious interventions. Or if you go in with schizophrenia or other conditions, not everybody who gets referred there will get there. But they just completely threw caution to the wind and threw these kids into these dangerous, untested, all these kind of things.
Yep.
It's dangerous. So this is what happens. Pronouns are not innocent. They're not even just compassionate. They're dangerous because, A, they're weaponized by people who are abusive, which a lot of the transgender lobby is. And they're also harmful because the second a child says, oh, I'm, like transgender, I'm a different sex, adults respond by fast-tracking into this like entire lifestyle, and no one's allowed to say no. No one's even allowed to question it. They're dangerous. This is why there's people who really truly care about children and about transgender people. You should really like start saying, have you thought about the consequences about all these things? Pronouns are not neutral, they're not innocent, and they're not harmless. Now, Stephen, I don't know what you think about this this whole concept, like the pronouns. I've even heard Christians say, "Oh, we should totally use pronouns because, how could we evangelize if we don't use our pronouns?" Or, it's more kind and compassionate to use our pronouns. What's your response to that?
Well, it's like I said earlier, like Matt Walsh was saying, using someone's preferred pronouns if they're rejecting their biological reality would be going along with a lie. Mm-hmm. It would be lying to say, okay, you are like, oh, you're using she, her pronouns, but you're a man, but I want to be nice, so I'm going to use she, her pronouns. No. Niceness does not rank above honesty. Mm-hmm. Saying the truth is more important than not hurting someone's feelings. As Ben Shapiro, of course, famously said in that conversation with that crazy transgender individual, Zoe Tur, mm-hmm. Facts don't care about your feelings. Mm-hmm. We cannot embrace something that is not true because it makes someone feel better. We have to know. We have to follow the line. We have to stay true, saying, this is what reality is. This is, the sky is blue. The sun is yellow, but it's really just really bright. But this is what truth is. It's not your truth. It's not my truth. There is objective reality, and then there is subjective reality. And do not mix the two, because if subjective reality intermixes with objective reality, then we don't know what truth is. And anything at any point in time can be true, as Obi-Wan says in Star Wars, from a certain point of view.
Very well said. I like to always bring it back to just common sense. If you're a Christian, what they're demanding that you do is they're demanding that you speak a lie. And it's you have to remember, this isn't about you. I'm being mean. No. They are actively requiring you to do something that you know is wrong and something that you know is untrue. This is a demand to speak the reality into existence. It's like Sam saying the moon is made of cheese. No, it's not. Yes, it is. I'm like, oh, yes, the moon is made of cheese. You may think it's not a big deal, but if you give in to lying, then you've given up any right to speak against the harms that are being done by this very thing. And if you're a non-Christian, I would say the same thing. If you go along with this, just go along to get along. What you're doing is you're basically giving them permission to do whatever they want to children. And then nobody can speak against it because you're not allowed. Mm-hmm. You're empowering people who are intent. And let's face it, let's be truly honest. The people who are trying to push this on children are not good people. They don't truly care about the children. They care about their ideology and their worldview, and they care about power. They want to destroy anybody who disagrees. Yep. These are not people that you should be compromising with, because they're not out for, it's about our, I just want to be, I want to feel like I said, this is all manipulative language. Yeah. All just to get you to play along with their game. It's the emperor has no clothes, but it's much more dangerous. It's not a harmless thing. It's not like Christians said a lot during COVID. Remember how in COVID, a lot of Christian friends, they told us it's not a hill to die on. I'm like, why not?
Yeah. You're
basically being forced to propagate a lie. Why is not?
Yeah.
Honestly. So that's what I think of pronouns. I think that they're not just harmless.
Yeah, of course not.
Of course not.
Unless they're, of course, describing me, and then, of course, I demand that you say His Royal Majesty.
Yeah, describe me as handsome and brilliant.
No, that's not pronouns. Those are your adjectives.
That's adjectives. Oh, but yeah. I get to decide my adjectives. They're my adjectives.
Mm-hmm. No, but you could say that your preferred pronouns would be handsome, Danny.
It's like my pronouns are supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And hamna is shabna pressure.
Hamna true and anana shabna pressure. What is your pronoun?
True and anana
shabna pressure.
True banana shabna pressure.
I got really annoyed when I had that as my text tone. So be like, what the heck is that? It's Biden.
Well, I didn't understand. I didn't know what it was for certain. No, you should do it if you're gonna have your own pronouns. Just make something that's very difficult to pronounce.
All the power to that kid who said it was banana and rock.
You said it wrong, you jerk. How dare you disrespect the pronouns?
Oh yeah, go into the dictionary and find the most complicated words to pronounce. Be like, this is my pronouns.
I got mine. This is the longest word I heard a while ago. It's anti-disestablishmentarianism. That's my pronoun.
Yeah.
It's like this is that. You jerk out there. You let's respect the pronouns.
Filthy Mexicans can't pronounce words.
Yeah, so it's hard.
All right. So that's probably going to end the show tonight. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for commenting and being a part of the stream. If you are watching after it's live on Rumble, BitChute, and YouTube, of course, leave us a comment, subscribe, follow, echo, whatever. Tell us how we're doing. We're following us on our text platforms, such as Facebook, Gitter, Twitter, and Parler. Of course, also comments on these posts. I'll try and post more segments to those side channels, but I get pretty busy, so no guarantee of that. And then, of course, tell us how we're doing. And on Facebook, counter the review bomb. Counter it.
Bam.
Fight hard.
Bam.
Fight on.
That's right.
Anyways.
Say it on.
So, without further ado, Danny, sign us out.
So, we are the Shrewd Dudes, and we always like to remind you, hey, why be rude when you can be shrewd? Keep it real, people.
Indeed.
Keep it smart, and don't devolve. Don't do what they do.
Don't
Do
devolve.
what we do.
Do what we do.
That's right.
All right. So you'll see everybody back on Tuesday for another Tuesday News Day. Until then, everybody have a fantastic weekend. Great night. So, good night. And as always, God bless.